a dash of mystery, a sparkle of magic, and all things cozy. Join your host, Elle Hartford, for Cozy Alchemy, a proud member of the Authors on the Air network. Hello and welcome to Cozy Alchemy, the show all about cozy, twisty books. I'm Elle, and my guest today is Melissa Westemeier, author of Dropped Like a Bad Habit. We'll get to that in a minute, but first, Melissa's going to start us off with two truths and a lie.
All right, so I have some false teeth. I snowmobile regularly in the wintertime, and I spent one summer in Egypt.
Ooh, oh my goodness. Oh, I really like these. And I like the range in temperatures that we have between snowmobiling and Egypt. That's nice. I can see how false teeth and snowmobiling might go together a little bit. But I'd like the Egypt one to be true. So I'm going to guess that the second one is the lie.
What did I say second?
Snowmobiling.
Snowmobiling is the lie. Yes.
Ah, nice. Okay. Do you have other winter sports that you prefer?
I'm a silent sports girl by nature. You know, I hate loud noises out when I'm outside. So cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. Yeah, I keep it pretty quiet in the winter time.
Very cozy. Yeah, I like that. and I also have to detour to say, so I recently got married and we honeymooned in Egypt. That was like our big dream vacation. Yeah, we did the cruise down the Nile and also spent some time in the big cities. So summer in Egypt, I bet that was amazing to have that much time there.
It was wonderful, yeah. I've heard that the cruises are pretty fabulous. So very cool that you got to do that.
Yes. Oh my goodness, it was so much fun. So very, very cool. But your series, it's the Nun the Wiser series, right?
Mm-hmm. Nun the Wiser Mysteries, yep.
Yeah, and it's set in Portland, which is yet another kind of sharp left turn weather-wise. Can you tell us about it a little bit, just to get us started off?
Sure. So the premise is, and actually it's Eugene, Oregon. So people
You're
usually...
right. I'm so sorry. People
No,
they were talking about University of Portland. Yeah,
yes,
but
it's the bigger city. People default to that, but that's okay. They're they're kind of similar anyway. But so the premise is there is a retired nun. Her name is Sister Bernadette Ohlson. People call her Bernie. She lives at the Abbey Senior Living, which was the Catholic parish and school that she taught at for her career. She was a middle school English teacher, and when she retires, she travels the world a bit, kind of kicks off everything on her bucket list, and by the time she comes back home, the parish has been closed and it's reopened, all remodeled as senior apartments, and so she's really happy to move back in there. She's she's creating a whole new community around herself with all the different people living there. That's quite a zany cast of locals.
Yes.
I had so
We'll
much
get
fun
to that. Yeah. I love them.
in book one, Dropped Like a Bad Habit, or I'm sorry, in book one is Old Habits Die Hard, and she discovers a body on the second floor one night after they're coming in from a community theater performance of State Fair, and she feels very invested in finding out who is behind this threat to her own community. And the person who arrives on the scene to lead the investigation is a young detective named A.J. Lewis, and A.J. is very loosely based on my oldest son, who's not quite 28 years old, but I wanted to create a millennial male detective, which I'm going to go on record here as saying I have yet to find another one in cozy fiction. So if there's another one out there, feel free to let me know, because I'm making a brag here that might not be accurate, but I was really deliberate in aging him younger than the average, with younger sensibilities, and so I used my son as a real prototype so I could develop some of his habits and hobbies and things like that.
Very cool. Very cool. And then, so the book we're here, mostly to talk about today, Dropped Like a Bad Habit, is book 2.
Yes.
Right, in the series. Yes. Yeah. And I just, because you brought it up, I have to say, one of the truly fun things about reading this book was the all the characters have their hobbies. They have the thing that they love, that they're really into, whether it's gaming for the detective, right? Or puzzling or knitting or what have you. How did you choose which hobbies to give to which characters, which to highlight? What was that like?
So I think one thing that makes life after retirement more productive and fulfilling is when you have a sense of purpose. And for a lot of people, that does involve their hobbies. You'll find that every single person living at the Abbey has their own jam, So for some people it's collecting. For other people it's actually a side hustle. Like I have one character who, her name is Elena, and she does a lot of alterations and sewing and tailoring for people, right?
Right.
And there's a couple guys who like to garden, and one of the things that happens in every book is Bernie trying to find her way through that, because her hobbies are pretty sedentary. She likes to read, she jigsaw puzzle,
Yeah.
and she sits and she does her daily walk, but she doesn't have like that same intentional sense of purpose. And so while the investigation in each story is part of that, in each book in the series, she's also trying on a new kind of hobby to explore. So that's something that just kind of follows her through. And in this particular
Right.
book, it's community activism becomes her hobby.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for my 28-year-old detective, it just seemed totally obvious to me that he should be a gamer, like my sons. I've got two sons, they're all young adults, and they all play video games. How they unwind, headsets on,
Yep.
they're in the zone, doing Red Dead Redemption 3 or Call of Duty or whatever. Sometimes alone, sometimes with their friends. It's really, it's a hobby that a lot of younger people indulge in.
Fair, yes. Well, and that's how we meet him in book two, at least. Yeah, that we're introduced to AJ through a gaming scene, which is very fun. First of all, just as kind of a fake out, because you're describing this setting, and then it's like, what on earth? And then it clicks. But also just the switching points of view. To begin with is kind of a neat thing to add to a mystery, but also to have it between the amateur sleuth and the detective, I thought was a really cool spin on it. What's that like for writing? How did you decide that that's what you wanted to do?
I really wanted to capture the dynamic of their age difference.
Mm-hmm.
They're such different people. He's 28, she's 80. She was his teacher. She's from a different generation. She's also of a religious order, and he is not any of those things. And so pairing them just is so strange. And then, but then seeing how their relationship develops throughout the series as they become more and more trusting of each other, and their respect for each other is always there, but it changes and evolves through the books. They do get frustrated and annoyed with each other for different reasons, and I just felt like the story felt incomplete if it was only portrayed from one person's point of view. I really wanted to have both.
Yeah, I think it works out really well.
Thank you.
Because you've touched on something else too that I really wanted to talk about, which is that you do have like a wide range of ages kind of represented in the characters. And you've talked a little bit about, basing AJ on your son. But even aside from him, like the side characters, there's some who are living in the retirement community, then there's some who are running businesses, there's, again, just this nice wide range. Was that really important to you kind of from the get-go?
It absolutely is, because I think we all live in places where there's everybody, right? And I wanted to make a real, it was very purposeful for me, really intentional, to be as inclusive as possible with ages, with people's backgrounds, with all kinds of aspects of their lives, even with disability inclusion, which I try to feature in every single book. People having different kinds of problems that there's, or different kinds of just the way they're built, making life difficult or more challenging. And I wanted to just be like, look, this is just a pastiche of all humanity, just kind of shows up, and we all figure out how to get along with each other and value one another and play and work nice together. And I wanted to really show that that's healthy, and that's, I think, what a good community looks like, when you've got that dynamic of all different people from all ages and backgrounds coming together and just, kind of clicking together and making it work.
Absolutely. Do you find that, like, obviously it's purposeful and it's very important, is it also sort of something that's fun to write? Like, I imagine, like, I know for my part, I find like it can challenge you to be creative too,
Yes. I mean, when you're looking at characters who are nothing like your own lived experience, you really have to step back and ask yourself, okay, what makes sense for this character? How are they looking at the world? What are their concerns? What would their hobby maybe be, or how would they interact with these other people? What would their trust level be like? So yeah, I definitely think it's fun to think about, and just making up all those different perspectives is just a blast. It's like world building. Like my kids.
Yeah.
When they were younger, I'm like doing it only on the page.
Fair. Well, and you mentioned like this idea of trust and trusting other characters, and we touched on it briefly, how much you wanted to highlight the trust between your sleuth and your detective, and I really, really enjoyed that. Like it does come through, the kind of teamwork aspect. What were your inspirations for that?
So the inspiration actually goes back to before book one was even written. So it was 21 years ago this summer, I went to a writing workshop at the University of Iowa, and I met a group of women there. They're all older than me, but we became writing partners. And one of my writing partners has a diagnosis of vascular dementia, and it forced her into memory care a few years ago. So it was shortly after COVID, and I went with one of our other writing partners to go visit her, sort of to say goodbye, because we weren't sure how long she'd be able to remember us, how long her health would be stable, all that kind of thing. So we went out to visit her, and while we were visiting, Mariana, we were like, hey, what do you want to do while we're visiting? And she's like, oh, I want to work on my new book idea. And so she had this book idea about this setting, a murder that takes place, which is the murder in book one, Old Habits Die Hard.
Oh.
She had the idea of the amateur sleuth being a retired nun. She wanted the detective, however, to be more based on like Endeavor from PBS Mystery.
Okay.
Which I'm like, I love Endeavor. I love him so much. But he just seemed like a needle scratch in 2020, whatever. So I'm like, no, we've got to definitely change this character to be more updated. So she had about 5 or 6 characters, and when our other writing partner and I left Mariana, I was just like, this is so sad that her book will never be written, because she really wasn't in any position to write it, even as a short story. So I was like, hey, let's write it for her and you give a publisher's name on it, which is what we ended up doing. And I tried to remain as true as possible to her core ideas, because she was, in fact, living in a senior apartment situation when she got the idea. I think that's really what inspired it. I layered in a lot of other stuff, obviously, from that core idea, but I wanted to just really remain true to this idea of the nun. She was just so, like, she's bossy. She's, she's like this, and, she just had such a good idea of what Bernie was like. She had the name and everything, which I kept with. I kept AJ's name, but I changed, his demeanor almost entirely. I still think he's pretty respectful and everything, but he's definitely a younger cut of character. And she had, like, a couple of the suspects, and she had an idea of, who the killer was, but then I'm like, well, you have this building with all these apartments, so I had to populate them with all these other people. So then I started like, okay, who lives in Eugene, Oregon? What kind of people live there? And just started like plugging them in and just saying, oh, well, what would their backgrounds be? What kinds of people would be typical in this area. And I had to do a little bit of research, but I think it turned out okay because my aunt lives there, and she said it felt like home when she was reading it. So,
oh, good.
like, all right, good. I've been to Eugene, but obviously I don't live there, so it was pretty fun for me to do my research and hope to portray it as authentically as possible.
Yeah, that is so cool. I love that, like, from the very start, this was an exercise in teamwork.
Yeah, it
Right?
really was.
Yeah, yeah, that is amazing. And it's one of my favorite things just about like cozy genres in general. Like the way that they highlight this community, right? And people coming together and we
Yeah.
can solve it together. That's so cool and so special.
Yeah, it's one of
Uh,
my favorite tropes about cozy mysteries is
mm-hmm.
that community, that tight knit group of people, and you find it, maybe it just is like a temporary one, like on a train or on a boat. But however, in cozy, there is that like we are in this together and we have to figure it out.
Exactly. Well, okay. And mentioning the setting, because you said like it is a real place and you've been there, and also on the fictional end, like you do have a large building full of people. You have to populate it, and then we have the shops and everything that also need to be populated. How did you approach building up the setting?
So I had known from book one that I had placed the Abbey. You think about the way neighborhoods used to be back in, the even at the turn of the century. You'd have your church, you'd have your shops, you'd have residential all around it. Everything was within a walking distance, right? It wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
suburban sprawl that now is so common to Americans. And I love that. I love the idea of living in a walkable area and having everything you need just within a short distance. So I took that idea, and I know that Eugene, just like many other cities of that size, has like these neighborhoods that kind of built up and clustered around the foundational institutions like churches and government
Right.
buildings, right? So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if this building is old, if this church and parish are old, then all these other things would have been around it. So in book one, Bernie walks down the street and she goes to local stores and stuff like that. But of course, it's the problem in a cozy series is you can't keep killing people in that same environment. Otherwise, everybody's gonna be like, "What is happening there?" Like nobody wants to make the midsummer, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, the next murder has to be closed, but it can't be in the building. And so then I started looking like, okay, what could happen in the neighborhood? And so that's really what informed that decision.
Gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. Well, it ends up working very well because I'm not too spoilery to say that one of the big tensions right at the beginning is the idea of a developer coming in to this, block of shops and trying to buy them up. So yeah, so moving out of the Abbey also brought in all kinds of possibilities.
Yes, it absolutely does.
That's so cool. Now, is it like we said, obviously real town, but is it a specific neighborhood within the town or the city as well?
So Eugene does have specific neighborhoods, but I
Mm-hmm.
kind of built up a fictional one in an area that I pegged on the map. I wanted it to be
Got
within
it.
driving distance of certain features in the city, like Alton Baker Park, for example. So I've located it. I constantly refer to this map of Eugene as a point of reference so that when I'm saying, oh, they're going here, they're going there, I can identify the direction and try to be accurate that way. But that specific, Chestnut and Spruce Street, there is not a Chestnut or a Spruce Street in Eugene. I made sure of that. I'm like,
I was gonna say, yeah.
there, but there's a lot of numbered streets in this neighborhood that it's actually kind of plotted on top of. So yeah, you
Gotcha.
can't actually go to, to Scylla's sandwich shop. You can't go to the
Right.
clear market or Plum to get a tattoo.
Fair. Did you also, so you have it mapped out relative to where it is other things in the city? Did you map out specifically like this, there's here are all the shops, this is
Yes.
who lives in which apartment, all that as well?
Yeah, I have two
Mm.
hand-drawn maps. One's of the building with all of the apartments, and
Mm.
you have to be really honest when you write a series, because readers are like, whoa, that's not right. So I have to have like the room numbers, and I often, Bernie will say, oh, that was the old third grade classroom. Why do I do that to myself? So now I have to like remember that, like, this room was also the third grade classroom, and now so-and-so lives there. So I've got one map of the building that kind of has all of that information on it. And then I have another map of just the street, and it shows like all the different buildings and who's in what and the names of the businesses and that kind of thing. Because there is a foot walk down the block, as later in the novel, AJ and his partner Taylor are going door to door asking questions, and you have to show them like making this journey with some fidelity to this world that you've suggested exists. So I have to have a visual aid, otherwise I'm totally hosed.
Yeah, especially for the purpose of a series, right? Yeah. Get that. Do you have anything else? Like, what's your writing method like? Do you have a very faithful character Bible, or do you outline all that sort of stuff?
I try to plot a bit. It's hard not to with a murder mystery, right? Because you can go off the rails pretty quickly. I hear of people, I know people who are pantsers as they write murder mysteries, and I'm like, how do you do that? Like, my brain would explode in my head. It would just be bad.
Yeah.
So I have like a list of character, a chart with everybody's names on it, and just references about like their jobs and their ages, stuff like that, so I can be faithful to it. And then when I plot it out, I do have an outline. It's not really specific, but it's specific enough that I always know. And I try to make a habit of writing a certain amount of words every week. I strive for about 7,000 words a week. To me is a very productive week. And then I try to always, before I break for the day, leave myself primed for the next scene that I'm going to write, because there's nothing worse than walking away not knowing what's going to happen next, and then you sit down the next day and it's just like, I don't know, like, what's going to happen. And I'm religious about that 7,000 words, so I have spent like days sitting in my chair staring at my screen writing nothing because I didn't know what was happening next, and that's not, that hurts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say, like, I like that it is a set number of words per week rather than per day, right? So you're giving yourself some leeway there. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. If I know I've got a busy week, I can say to myself, okay, you've got to really hit it hard these couple of days and just go for it. Or, I'll be writing through the weekend. I don't like that, but if I have to. So you can really get ahead of it. But it holds me accountable if I know the word count every week that I want to hit. And it gives me an idea, too, of when will a project be finished. Knowing that word count is helpful.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, what's next? Are you going to continue with this series? Will we have more Nun mysteries?
Yes. The next Nun the Wiser Mystery comes out in February. It is titled A Fatal Habit. So we're going to see
nice.
and Bernie back in action again. And so there will be 2 new books in the series coming out next year.
Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. Nice. Do you have other series and things going on at the same time?
I am working on some other projects. Actually, the next 2 Nun the Wiser Mysteries are sitting with my publisher currently, so I don't even have my hands on them anymore. They are complete. And that's, as you know, as a writer, that's a weird thing about writing, is what you're working on has no relationship to what everybody else is looking at. And so they're asking you about stuff that maybe got finished 2 years prior to that conversation. And your brain is always like shifting gears from one to the other. But I'm currently working on an older book that I had self-published about almost 20 years ago. Like, it's so dated. But I do think that the story holds up, and I'd like to do something with it. But I'm like, oh my goodness, one of the characters opens her cell phone. Like, takes it out and
Hey, you could do that these days with like a folding phones.
Are a thing. But it's just, there's just stuff happening. Like there's 2 spaces after every period. Like we've got to totally got that thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on another project that's it's not like anything I've ever written before. It's a story of 2 couples whose relationship with each other and with and they're friends. These 2 couples are really good friends with each other, and their whole relationship, like from every direction, gets torn apart because of one person's behavior. And it's darker than what I normally write. It's more serious. And that's been a fun challenge because I was trying to get the heads of 4 really awful people because it's told from each of their points of view. Yeah. So in these trying times, I'm like, yeah, let's write about awful people doing terrible things for awful reasons to each other. And they're all informed by like trauma and guilt. They won't forgive, and their bitterness is just escalating. So that's been, yeah. I have that sitting with beta readers right now. We'll see how I pulled it off.
There you go. Sometimes you just need an outlet for that kind of thing. You gotta get it out, and then you can go back to like, community. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let's feel good. Let's see who Bernie can start to help again. Get the gang at the Abbey doing something crazy together.
Yeah. Fair. Excuse me. So now, I ask everybody this. What is a piece of advice that you would give to yourself? Like if you could talk to yourself when you were just starting out as an author, what would you say?
I guess I would say you can do it. You can push through all the rejection. You're going to get every no, every bad move teaches you something. So the other thing I would have told myself is go to the writing workshop at the University of Iowa sooner. And it was like literally the definition of professional help. I was really trying to go on my own without anybody else to read for me, to bounce ideas off of, and that isn't very helpful. There's an expiration date to that kind of behavior. So I would have done that sooner. I started writing before my first son was born, and I didn't go to Iowa until I was 8 months pregnant with my 3rd kid. So
okay.
Help me out a bit.
Yeah. Well, I imagine you were pretty busy in between those times as well.
I was, but I was just really pulling away on my own, and it never occurred to me for a long time that I needed to get out of my. It seems counterproductive. I want to be a writer. I should go meet other people and start relationships with them. Like that doesn't make sense when you say it, but when you are a writer, you're like, yeah, that's absolutely what's going to help you out.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Time and time again, we picture writing as this solitary thing, but it is in communities that authors really thrive. And I love that we're coming back around to community once more.
Well played.
All right. And my one final question for you is, what is one win that you've had in the past week? Could be good news of any kind, big or small.
Okay, so the win I had was when I looked up the Google bio, when you type your book title into Google, and you're just like, what is it going to come up right away? And the Amazon description was like, for readers of Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club, and I was like,
ooh,
okay, I'll take that. So I felt pretty pleased by that.
Very nice.
Yeah,
recognition from the internet.
AI, Amazon Googlebot wants to put me in that category. I will take that all day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's also another good endorsement for just like continuously showing up, just one little bit at a time, and eventually the internet will recognize you.
Hopefully.
We'll put you I mean, not to discount, but like behind the scenes, that's something I think about a lot, is just the fact that purely, you post on your blog once a week, and that's how Google learns that you are something of interest, right? So that's where it took my mind. It just you show up on the internet consistently, and eventually you'll get a cool endorsement.
That's right. That's exactly right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah,
and congratulations.
Thank you, Elle. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No problem. And also, for those that don't know, Melissa has her own podcast, My Bookcase Slays. There we go. Which is so cool. And also with Authors on the Air, so you should be sure to check that out. And of course, I will have links and everything in the bio. And yeah, once more, this has been a lot of fun.
Yes, it has. Thank you, Elle.
Yeah, no problem. And for all you listeners out there, I will talk to you next time. Cozy Alchemy is brought to you by Authors on the Air, and our theme music is by Cyberwave Orchestra. For everything else, blame Elle. You can find her online at ellehartford.com.